From the field to the film room to the war room, we've got you covered every step of the way as the road to the draft starts right now. Hello and welcome to another episode of the Armchair Scouts. I'm your host, Shane Haff, and you can follow me on Twitter at ShaneHaffNFL. I'm joined today by my co-host and fellow draft enthusiast Dives. Give him a follow on Twitter at Mr. Crockpot. Be sure to check out his podcast, Party on Broad. Dives, how are you doing today?
Doing well. We're a month away from the NFL draft. Talking about a position here that has a lot of variance. I think it's more of a day two position than it is a day one, and we'll get into it.
All right. Absolutely. And I'm also joined by my co-host on Chalk Talk, Mark Henry Jr. Give him a follow on Twitter at Mark Henry Jr. _. Be sure you check out his Tough Cover radio show every Saturday. Mark, how are you doing?
I'm doing well. It feels like we're in the home stretch now to the draft, less than a month now. So it feels like now the casuals are really they're pretty aware of what's going on. So no, it's not. I don't even mean that as like a negative thing. It's just that's that kind of time of the sports calendar. March Madness is wrapping down. This is kind of over the next month the biggest kind of thing in sports going on.
All right. Well, we are going to get into it. We're going to talk about the top 10 offensive linemen in this draft. We're combining all offensive linemen together because so often guys that played tackle in college will kick into guard and things like that. And so we just made the decision a couple of years ago to cover all linemen together. That's why we expand it out to our top 10. And so without any further ado, let's go ahead and jump in. And I will say, I'll give some stats, sack rates, pressure rates, penalties, and stuff. All my stats are going to be out of the top 17 draft eligible guys. So I'll try to remember to throw those out as we come to these guys. But Mark, I'll throw it to you first. Who do you have at number 10?
My number 10 guy is Josh Connerly. There's not a lot for me separating 5 to 10. I mean, honestly, there's not a lot separating 5 to 12. So I like Josh Connerly. I feel like I'm going to come in a little bit lower than consensus on him. I think industry wide, if you look at his overall ranks and probably among his ranks on the O-line, but I'm a little, and I think you'll hear this when we get into it. I think I'm going to be the highest of us three on this class overall. So Josh Connerly being my number 10 guy, I'm still relatively high on him. He's got an 8.86 RAS. He's a 2-year starter at left tackle for the Ducks, 2 sacks and 20 pressures allowed over 2 years. I don't think he's an elite run blocker, but I think he's fine there. He's a former 5-star prospect out of Seattle, was the number 2 offensive tackle in his class. He comes in to the league only 21 years old, so definitely not a finished product. You have to imagine there's a lot of improvement that can be done if you get him into kind of an NFL O-line coach and an NFL system in terms of, everything that comes with that. Fun fact before I turn it over to you guys, because I know Shane always, if I don't give this, Shane will be upset. Began his high school career as a running back before transitioning to an offensive line his sophomore season. Thought that was a fun fact.
That is a fun fact. And I did have that one written down as well. So he ranked 7th in sack rate, 4th in pressure rate, and 6th in penalties in 2024 among those 17 guys that I mentioned. So he is 10 for Mark. He was 6 for me, and he's number 8 for Dibes. I gave him a 2nd-round grade. I said I think he projects best to an outside zone scheme that will use his athleticism to move laterally at the snap and help mitigate his below average power while he adds more strength and technical refinement. So that's kind of my bird's eye view of Josh Connerly. Dibes, is there anything that you want to add in on Connerly?
No, Mark nailed it. I mean, he's one of the most athletically gifted players in his class. Very quick, very fluid, explosive, looks good in the second level, 1,800 snaps over the last 2 years. And he's got some really good tape against Abdul Carter and against some other big name edge rushers. So there's a lot of buzz with this guy's name, especially to the Eagles in round 1. I don't buy it. I think he's much more of a day 2 guy, and I think it would be a reach.
All right. Let's go to my number 10.
By
Is
the way,
also
I forgot to say my comp was Anton Harrison. I
Got
didn't have a rash chart ready for that, but that was my comp.
all right. So my number 10 is also Dibes' number 10. He's number 6 for Mark. It's Arante Ersari. Did I say that right, Dibes?
Ariante.
Ariante. I couldn't find a pronunciation in every interview. They called him Tay, so I was just guessing. But out of Minnesota, he threw shot, discus, and javelin in high school. Didn't start playing football until his junior year, and he came out as a 3-star recruit. Played in one game during the COVID season, and then redshirted in 2021 before becoming a starter in 2022. He was first team All Big Ten in 23. Big Ten Offensive Lineman of the Year in 2024. It's one of those weird prospects that we can't get an age for online, which always baffles me, but he's going to be up there because he is a fifth-year senior. He ranked 9th in sack rate, 10th in pressure rate, and 5th in penalties. And he's played 2,344 career snaps at left tackle, 80 at right tackle, and technically he played 3 at left guard. But 9.36 relative athletic score. I think he's a really good run blocker. He has a good feel for combo blocks and the ability to drive off of those and then release to get to the second level. He's got good footwork in his pass sets and good hands to catch inside counter moves and wall them off. I feel like he's generally pretty well aware of stunts when they come. He's got an explosive first step when he fires off the ball. I think he's a good straight line mover, but not the best lateral agility, which you can see if you look at his RAS chart. It's all greens, 9 and above on his 40 and his splits, and it's all reds and yellows on the agilities. And so that tracks with what I was seeing. I do think he's overly aggressive on kick out blocks, and he allows defensive ends to get by him at times. He'll drop his head and lunge. His punch timing can be inconsistent when he's in pass sets, and it opens him up to outside moves. When his punches land, they're really effective. But he's still pretty new to the position, relatively speaking, and it shows, but he's also an older prospect. And so that's not the best combination. I gave him a second-round grade. I think he's a developmental starter with the tools to become a good player, but it's going to be a work in progress. A play-action heavy scheme would be a really good fit for him because it would let him move forward even on his pass sets. So that's what I saw in him. Dibes, anything you want to add? He was number 10 for you as well.
I really like him. He's one of the few guys that really pop when I watch. I think he fits the Eagles to a T. A heavy zone heavy scheme that wants to just pile drive and bully guys at the point of attack. He fits what the Eagles want to do with Saquon and AJ Dillon and just move bodies. And I like him a lot. So,
all right, Mark, anything you want to add in on him? He's number 6 for you.
Yeah, I mean, I will say in a class that there's a lot of question marks on offensive tackles who people think are going to move inside. I think he's an offensive tackle. Like, I don't think he's moving inside. So I think you do know what he is. Obviously, like you said, I do think that there's developmental stuff there. But, I mean, he had a pretty good career there, already. So with whatever he already had right now, it wasn't like he was playing at a low level there in the Big Ten. 1 sack allowed this year, 2 sacks the year before, 2 sacks the year before that. I'm not saying he's a perfect prospect or anything like that, but you look at that RAS score, the experience he has being a 3-year starter, knowing that he can stick as an offensive tackle, in my opinion, I think you have to feel pretty good that he's going to be a starter in the NFL long term.
All right.
he's fun.
All right. Well, let's keep rolling to our number 9s. Dibes, I'll throw it to you first. You have Kelvin Banks Jr. at number 9. Mark has him at number 8, and I have him at number 4.
Yeah.
Talk to me about Banks.
Guy I've seen mocked all over the place, like top 10 and second round. But Kelvin Banks is a guy that's played more than 2,600 snaps at left tackle. He's got a lot of technique, got some polish there. Definitely one of the more reliable pass blockers in college football. He's only allowing 8 pressures on 450 150 pass blocking snaps. Definitely if you're looking for a pass blocking tackle in this class, this might be your dude. Moves well in space, has a lot of physical upside, and he's probably a developmental starter. And the biggest question mark for him revolves around some of his run blocking. He needs to grow there. His arms barely pass the dreaded 33-inch threshold. So maybe he's a guy that also kicks to that guard position like many of the other guys we'll be talking about tonight. But I've got a end of round 1 grade on Kelvin Banks. I think he should be a day 2 guy, but given this draft class, I wouldn't be surprised if he's a day 1 guy.
Yeah, so he ranked 6th in sack rate, 5th in pressure rate, and 11th in penalties. My biggest thing I noticed with him is once he gets latched in pass protection, he tends to lean, and it gets him off balance, and it opens him up to penalty flags or getting beat. He needs to trust his lower body strength and perhaps add some of that to anchor better. But I give him a first-round grade as well. I think he needs some technical refinement, but you could mitigate a lot of his issues in like an RPO, play action, screen heavy offense that lets him be more aggressive. It sounds like we're about the same because I had like an end of round 1 grade on him as well. He's just up at number 4 for me because my 5 and down are not first round grades for me.
There was a time when he was like by far like OT1 in this draft.
Yeah. Mark, anything you want to add in on Banks?
I am trying to share my RAS chart right now for Banks. Bad radio here, which not on the radio, so that makes it even worse. Bad podcasting.
My bad. Sorry, Shane. You got it.
But it's Deion Dawkins. It's Deion. I think I shared the wrong one. This is just bad job by Mark here. Got to be more prepared. Like me and Shane, when we used to do Chalk Talk, we used to have the press conference in the middle of the pod to give an update on how the pod was going. But Kelvin Banks versus Deion Dawkins. There's some similarities there. There was actually a more direct RAS chart for him by their suggestions, which was Andrew Thomas. I think Andrew Thomas was a lot more of a clean prospect than Kelvin Banks at that point, so I didn't want to use that. So I went with a little bit of a little bit less of a lofty comp, I guess you could say.
All right. Well, Mark, let's talk about your number 9 guy. And I feel like this is a guy that Eagles Twitter is in love with. He's number 9 for you. He's number 5 for me, and he's number 4 for Dibes. It is Tate Ratledge out of Georgia. So talk to me about Ratledge.
I'm so mad at all of you for having him up that high because I thought I was a Tate Ratledge guy, and I have him like inside my top 40. Like I love Tate Ratledge, and I have him at 9, and I feel like that was disrespectful. Bad, awful timing by my wife walking in there. Couldn't script worse timing. But Tate Ratledge.
Your dog is upset with your Tate Ratledge ranking.
It's the Georgia Bulldogs, so you have to refer to her opinion there. But Tate Ratledge is a guy who I've been drafting in mock drafts all off season long. And PFF had him like in the 160s, I think, as recent as a couple weeks ago. They've only recently moved him into their top 90 on their mock draft database. He had a 9.98 relative athletic score. He's a 3-year starter. I'm actually real quick to pick apart PFF here. PFF scouting report on Tate Ratledge starts off with not the greatest athlete. 9.98 relative athletic score at the offensive guard.
Well, they're technically correct because if he was the greatest athlete, he'd be a 10.0.
That's fair.
You got to look for the loopholes.
That greatest is doing a lot of the work for PFF there. But a 3-year starter at the highest level in the SEC is turning 24 years old soon here. So he's one of the oldest prospects in the draft. 2 sacks and 10 hurries allowed over 3 years. Back-to-back All-American over the last 2 years. He can be too upright at times. He's a huge guy for the guard. position, 6'6", actually a little taller than 6'6". So he can be a little too upright at times. He has had some reoccurring ankle problems. I think that's why he's been pushed down some draft boards. It seems like now, maybe after that combine testing, he's getting pushed up to where he ultimately should be. I think there's a really high floor and a pretty darn high ceiling with Tate Ratledge. Honestly, you can make a strong argument he could be higher on my list, and maybe I let early groupthink get me too much, not putting him high enough on my list, to be honest, because I was so high on him, having him like 40 overall when he was like 160 on these mock draft databases. Right. I might need to adjust. I might need to bump him up commensurate with the inflation that's been going on across the industry. So my comp for him was Evan Mathis, an Eagles shout out there. And another guy who tore apart the combine from a RAS score perspective at the offensive guard position, turned into obviously a really, really good player in the NFL. But yeah, I love Tate Ratledge, probably pretty much a finished product. I think probably a guy, if you're drafting him, you're plugging him in to start day one.
Yeah, so he was 10th in sack rate, 7th in pressure rate, 3rd in penalties, has 2,077 snaps at right guard. I think the concerns with him, and I love Ratledge, the concerns with him are related to the injuries. He's missed significant time twice in 4 years with different lower body injuries. It was a Lisfranc fracture in 2021 that cost him the season, and I believe he had tightrope surgery for a high ankle sprain in 2024. So there's some concerns with injury things. And then he hasn't shown at least any positional versatility. He has only played right guard. And when you talk about interior guys, that could potentially push you down boards. This guy's got Philadelphia Eagle written all over him. I mean, he's from Georgia. He's athletic. He's a right guard, which they need. Like, this is a guy that I could easily see the Eagles picking. And I gave him a 2nd round grade. I said my little synopsis was pro ready, scheme diverse right guard who's ready to start day one. Yep. Fits a little better in a gap scheme, but I wouldn't be overly concerned about an inside zone run scheme either. And that if that doesn't read Philadelphia Eagles, I don't know what does. All right, yeah. Dives, anything you want to add in on Ratledge?
He's my 35th overall prospect in this draft. Love him. It's just a no-nonsense mauler in the run game, but he's a well-balanced prospect. You touched on the athleticism. It's elite. Plus, we know he's got reps against, 80% of the defense. So that'll be fun.
By the way, fun fact, he is 23 years old on draft night as long as he goes in the 1st or 2nd round. His birthday is day 3, so he gets to avoid being the dreaded 24-year-old prospect as long as he goes in the first 2 days.
Hey, it worked for Danny Watkins, right? How old was he? 28?
Something like that. All right, let's go to my number 9. He is number 7 for Mark. He's number 3 for Dives. It's Tyler Booker out of Alabama. He's a 4-star recruit who played right tackle in high school on the same offensive lineman as fellow Bama teammate J.C. Latham, who came out last year. He kicked inside in college. He's played a little bit at right guard and left guard in 2021 before he became the full-time left guard starter in 2023. First team all SEC in 2023. Second team All-American and a team captain in 24. He's only 21 years old. He did test very poorly at the combine, 3.65 relative athletic score, 6'4" and 5'8", 321 pounds. So his size is good, but he was 1st in sack rate, 9th in pressure rate, 13th in penalties. And then, like I said, overall, he's played 77 snaps at left tackle, 167 at right guard, and 1,763 at left guard. Booker has a dense build. He's got really good arm length at 34.5-inch arms, good play strength. He's a powerful run blocker who generates knockback initially at the point of attack, and then he latches on and continues to drive you upfield. In pass protection, he plays square to rushers and basically invites them into his frame and then drops anchor. When you leave him uncovered, he'll look for work, and he delivers big shots to adjacent rushers. However, I mean, the combine testing is bad. I didn't think his athleticism was that bad on tape. I wouldn't say it was good, but it's adequate. But it raises questions and makes you go back and look again when you run that bad at the combine. He does struggle to climb to targets in the second level in the run game. It's poor functional athleticism and poor tracking ability basically make that something you don't want to ask him to do a lot. He is able to kick out ends and power concepts or to get around the pin blocks on pin pull concepts. Overall, though, just poor lateral agility. He's susceptible to inside counter moves from widely aligned rushers, and he also struggles to like deliver a rusher one direction and then work back across his gap and stunts. I gave him a second round grade. Said he's an offensive guard in a run heavy scheme that focuses on duo or pin pull type concepts. So that's Tyler Booker. I'm the lowest on him of the three of us. Dibes, you're pretty high on him. What am I missing on Tyler Booker?
Nothing. I didn't expect him to test so poorly, giving me some Kenyon Green vibes on this one, not going to lie. But he's a run blocker. For me, he was in that same tier as Tate Ratledge. I had Tyler Booker as my 32 overall prospect, so he's right in that same range. But a guy that you can plug and play and just be a very good run blocker. So definitely raises some questions regarding his athleticism. But we'll see.
All right. Mark, anything you want to add on there before we move on?
Yeah, the athleticism thing is definitely part of like, why do I have him above Tate Ratledge is probably a question Mark is going to be asking himself when we're stacking these big boards. My comparison for him was Osiris Torrance, who didn't quite as much take a big old dump in the middle of the combine field as much as Tyler Booker and Kenyon Green did. But Tyler Booker just graded out a little worse than Torrance at pretty much everything. So I thought that was kind of the hopeful glance because Torrance has turned into a pretty good starter for Buffalo.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's keep rolling on to our number 8s. We've already talked about Marks and Dibes. So my number 8 is Gray Zabel, who is number 5 for Mark, and he is number 1 for Dibes. Out of North Dakota State, he was a two-way player in high school, unranked as a recruit. He arrived at North Dakota State in 2020 as a 240-pound offensive tackle. He weighed 312 with the combine, by the way. So he's done a lot of work, a lot of body recomposition, became a full-time starter for them back in the 2022 season. So he's 23 years old, 6'5" and 7/8, 312 pounds, good vertical and broad jumps, didn't do the agilities or the sprints. He's played a bit of everywhere, 974 snaps at left tackle, 453 at left guard, 17 at center, 222 at right guard, and 1,064 at right tackle. So he's been everywhere. In 2024, he was 8th in pressure or sack rate, 2nd in pressure rate, and 10th in penalties. He has great pad level in the running game, uses his natural leverage to seal off rush lanes and generate displacement. And he does an excellent job finishing blocks to the ground. He's got a nasty streak as a run blocker. He's got that ability to work to the second level in the run game. And in pass protection, he's just smooth athletically. He's got good footwork. He has on-time hand strikes to stall out rush plans. He shows the ability to absorb contact and anchor against power rushes. However, he does struggle to recover if he loses that initial leverage battle. He gets a narrow base. He's still a little light, even with all the weight that he's gained in the trenches. And though he can work to the second level, he's not an elite athlete. Like athletic linebackers can beat him to the spot. His punch accuracy can be a little scattershot, and so it leads to a lot of grabbing, which leads to a lot of penalties. He was flagged 15 times in the last 2 years, and he struggles to gain depth consistently to protect the edge. I think he likely needs to move to the interior at the NFL level, but he does have 692 career snaps along the interior, so it's not like one of these guys that's only played tackle that is just theoretical. So I gave him a second-round grade. I said he's an interior offensive line player who needs technical refinement, but could be a starter on the interior early on. And so that's Gray Zabel. Dibesy's number 1 for you. Anything you want to add in on him?
This more so speaks to, I think, the quality of the position. I think it would be in that same tier as like Graham Barton and Jackson Powers Johnson. I really like Gray Zabel quite a bit. If you look at his tape, his best tape was on the interior than left tackle, which he played last year. The guy's just a mauler, man. He's a straight mauler. I do think he's a really good athlete. I mean, he only did the vertical jump, and that was the best among the offensive group. And the size, he could start, the versatility, he could start at left guard, right guard, you name it. It has Eagles written all over it, fits zone. I think that versatility is king in today's NFL, and that's a big reason why he's number one in my rankings. I think he's a sure thing, high floor kind of guy, low ceiling, but he's just fun to watch. He's a mauler, he's a finisher, gets to the second level, a really fun prospect.
All right, Mark, who is your Zabel comp?
It was Graham Barton. I think Dives hit on why you would think that with him kind of moving all over, you're not quite sure what he's going to be at the next level. I might have missed Dives saying this when I was trying to pull something up over here. What does Dives? What do you think he ends up landing at?
What? Where? What do you mean?
What position do you think he plays, Zabel?
It'll be a left guard or right. Well, I mean, I think he could do left guard, center, or right guard, to be honest. Maybe he starts at center.
Do you think he could play tackle if he needed to? If he needed to bump out the tackle,
yeah, but I don't think that's his like end position. I think his best position, kind of like we'll get to Will Campbell, but like I feel like his best position would be working at left guard or right guard.
My fear with him at tackle is he's smaller and he's got short arms. And I have concerns about like his foot quickness and hand placement against edge rushers on an island. So like if you could change the picture of one of those, like if you're asking me, do you play him on the interior and he gets some technical refinement and later in his career, could he play tackle if he needed to? Probably. I would be really scared to try to ask him to play tackle as a rookie though.
I take it back. I'm looking at my notes here and it says probably would be best as a center. Okay. At least to start. So
no, I think you could play any of them. I was just curious which you thought he'd be best at, and I think that's the value of him, right? Like, I kind of reminds me. This isn't a comp that I had thought of until when we were talking about it right now, but like Elijah Vera Tucker when he went in the teens of that draft, when it was kind of the appeal to him was the idea that you could probably end up throwing him wherever you needed at that time on your line, like whatever kind of weak spot you had or injury you had, he could kind of plug in and fill that hole. You could probably make the same argument for Zabel.
Yeah.
All right. Well, let's keep rolling. Dibes, talk to me about your number 7.
Who's that?
Josh Simmons. Number 7 for you. Number 3 for me and Mark.
Josh Simmons. And this is where the variance comes into play, because when he's on the field, man, he was on the hot seat, man. No, that's not the heater. That's what I'm trying to say. When he was on the field, he was really making a name for himself. Has some of the best footwork and range of any prospect in this class. Footwork, technique, range. This guy checks off a lot of boxes. Light feet, can really play that tackle position really well. And I thought he was playing some of his best football in 2024 until a season-ending injury cut his time short, I think like week 6. And it sucked because, like I said, he was looking like the first-round talent we all thought he was. The good news, he's reportedly ahead of schedule in his recovery. The better news, if you're projecting him forward, this is a pure left tackle prospect within a draft that there's not a lot of those kind of dudes. So Josh Simmons, the foot speed, the pass protection, the mirror skills, I think it's all there. I think someone's going to overdraft him. I'm a little worried about that injury. Of course, that it's a knee injury, but I wouldn't be surprised if he's drafted in the first round. I think he's probably more of a high round 2 kind of dude. But Josh Simmons has a lot of talent when he's on the field. And correct me if I'm wrong, I don't think there's a lot of other injuries on his resume. I need to look into that. But anyway, Josh Simmons, there it is.
Yeah, he was first in sack rate, first in pressure rate, and first in penalties in 2024. But he's just one of those guys. He's number 3 for Mark and I. The medical checks are everything because that torn patellar tendon is a huge injury that players have struggled to come back from. He also faced weaker competition in 24 before the injury, so it can be hard to tell how much of his dominance was related to taking a leap versus playing that weaker competition. He was flagged 25 times in 2022 and 2023 combined, so that's something to watch out for. But I gave him a first-round grade and said he's a scheme-diverse offensive tackle who can play either side of the line, but he's got major medical red flags to check out. So, Mark, who was your comp for Simmons?
Christian Darrisaw, another guy who kind of went through the process injured. I have that right there if you want to share it. So neither of them have full RAS comp, so it's kind of just a size comp. Josh Simmons, slightly shorter arms. Again, another guy. I'm not a doctor, but I have Josh Simmons as a top 10 prospect in terms of just what we saw on the tape and on the field. He's my number 3 overall O-lineman, and I think he's every bit of what you would want as an offensive tackle. He's nasty out there. Only 1 sack allowed, with only 11 pressures in his year and a half at Ohio State. He, by the way, and again, I'm not a doctor, but he did after only 5 months removed from his patella injury, he did work out at Ohio State's pro day and was moving around really well. There was someone from Underdog Sports who was there who said, I don't care if 85% of Josh Simmons' bloodstream is HGH. It's a medical miracle that he looks this good after only 5 months. And he's someone who goes to a lot of pro days and sees a lot of that stuff. So, but yeah, I think just based on tape, just based on the field and the measurables that we do have, I see no reason as to why this guy isn't an elite offensive line prospect. If the injury is preventative, and something that we have to be concerned about long-term, that's another conversation. I don't know enough to know that, I guess, but just in terms of on the field, I love this kid.
It is always nice on these shows to be able to be like, you know what? I'm not a doctor.
Yeah.
Or, you know what? I'm not a private investigator, because we don't have to stake our jobs on that aspect of it, which is always kind of nice. But yeah. So let's keep rolling. We'll go to my number 7. This is a guy that is not inside Mark or Dibe's top 10. Donovan Jackson from Ohio State. Threw the shot and discus in high school. It was a 5-star recruit with a top 10 ranking. He took 103 snaps as a true freshman at left guard and right guard before becoming the full-time starter at left guard in 2022 and 2023. In 24, he played at left guard, but he kicked out to left tackle in week 9 because the guy we just talked about got injured. So he's 22 and a half years old, 9.57 relative athletic score. He was 12th in sack rate, 13th in pressure rate, and 4th in penalties this season. I will say, though, he was not done any favors because the first game he had to kick out to left tackle, he faced off against Abdul Carter. And he allowed both of his sacks on the year and 5 of his 19 pressures in that game to Abdul Carter. And so I think we have to grade a little bit on a curve with that. He's well-rounded, builds, got good arm length, solid athletic ability, generates displacement in the run game. He's at his best moving downhill, but he's got the athleticism to pull as well. Good ability to sink his hips and drop anchor against bull rushes. I think he passes off stunts well. He looks for work when he's uncovered, all the things you want a guard to be doing. He does have a false step in the run game that gets him into troubles with aiming points at times. And so there's times he just allows quick penetration in the run game. Along those same lines, he can struggle with highly athletic rushers who set him up with stutter steps at times and they'll cross his face. And it relates to some erraticness in his footwork. He can lose his balance against shifty rushers. He'll overcommit towards defenders and then it opens up counters across his face. So he played left tackle this year. You want him to be a guard in the league. I gave him a second round grade and just basically said he's a scheme diverse guard. 1,900 snaps at left guard, only 61 at right guard, but I think it's probably reasonable to assume he could play right guard if that's what you needed. So that is Donovan Jackson, number 7 for me, not inside the top 10 for Mark or Dives.
Easily could have been 10 for me over Connerly. He's 11 for me. So yeah, I really like Jackson.
He's in that tier of like day 2 guys. Right. I'd be totally fine drafting him. Totally fine.
All right. Well, let's go to number 6. Dibes has a guy at his number 6 that, despite the fact he's not in my top 10, he's one of my favorites in this draft. In fact, I texted Dibes when I was watching guys the other day, and I was like, I found the offensive lineman that I want the Eagles to draft. And he just responded and said, it's Charles Grant. And it was Charles Grant. And Dibes knows my type so well. But Charles Grant checks in at number 6 overall number 6 offensive lineman for Dibes. Dibes, talk to us about your guy.
Charles Grant, man, there's not a lot of guys that I've fallen in love with in terms of like tackle in this draft or offensive line, but Charles Grant as a prospect is one worth betting on. He's a guy that has a lot of tools, definitely has a stamp to his name for Jeff Stoutland University. And you look from the beginning, he's got very good athleticism. He's got a wrestler's background. Where he needs to grow is more of the technical kind of things. He doesn't have a lot of polish, but that foundation of what you're looking for, that tools, the traits, are all the things to get excited about when it comes to upside. This is an explosive athlete. He carries his weight extremely well. I think he can absolutely gain more room on his frame down the road. Looks great on the second level, creating space as a puller. Very strong hands. He's got very good length, good short area agility that'll help him as a pass protector. And I just love the fit with the Philadelphia Eagles. That explosiveness, his ability to fit the run game, his ability to dominate the point of attack, and just in a draft where arm length is such an issue for nearly every tackle prospect we've spoken about or that's on this list, I think this guy stands out as a guy that can fit inside and potentially replace Lane Johnson at right tackle down the road due to that off-the-charts foundation. So Charles Grant is a really fun name. Definitely one of my favorites for day 2.
Yeah, really fun guy to watch. Didn't play football until he was a junior in high school. Obviously at a lower school at William and Mary. He's gained 60 pounds since he got there. He's highly athletic and needs a lot of polish, like Dives mentioned. And that's a Stoutland University candidate. So I would love to see the Eagles walk out of the 3rd round with Charles Grant on their roster.
Hard pass.
Boo.
Hard pass. It's such a jump from the SEC to the NFL, let alone playing at William and Mary and going against, Shane and Dives at defensive end. So I hard pass for the development that I think's there. I think his feet are pretty slow. I don't think he's just like dominate like Michael Orr in The Blind Side at William and Mary, like pushing people to the bus. Like I don't know what I would have to see to be in, I guess, on the Charles Grant tape, but it would have to be better than I guess what I wasn't knocked my socks weren't knocked off, and I think they'd have to be for me to be in. He didn't make my top 100.
You know who had worse tape than Charles Grant coming out?
Who?
Jordan Mailata. because he'd never even played football before.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think that's an exception to the first rule. He's also not Charles Grant's also not 6'7" or whatever Mailata is, but yeah, I'm not in love.
There you go, Mark.
That's fair. That's fair. I like him as a long-term developmental guy, not a guy I'd be sinking a first or second round pick into for sure.
Yeah, I mean, if they take him in the third round, I mean, what am I going to complain too much about a third round pick? But he didn't make my top 100, and he wasn't one of like the 10 to 15 players that I like was sad to leave out, I guess, either.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's keep rolling up to number 5. Dibes has Will Campbell at number 5. Mark and I both have him at number 2. So Dibes, you're up again. Talk to us about Will Campbell.
All right, here we go. All right. This guy's
Dibes hates this guy.
He's a dude that carries a big name, and he has since his time at LSU. Trying to find his goddamn. There it is. There's too many graphics on this thing. All right, Will Campbell. Let's get into it. Played more than 2,500 snaps at LSU in his 3 years. None have come anywhere other than tackle. But you look at his foot speed and length and questionable projection. I think, and I'm not this should like I think a lot of people say this is a negative, but to me it's not. But for me, kind of like Charles Grant, like I think his best projection is on the interior, shining in close quarters, playing to his strengths. He's got a lot of brute strength. And I think that's the better home for him to kind of maximize what he does best. Campbell is explosive. Again, good functional strength, but the lack of length, the lack of things you're looking there on the edge, I think that's why I think he's not a top 10 prospect. I think he's more of a, route and one kind of guy. I have him number 41 on my big board. He gave up 18 pressures and 2 sacks last year. And I watched a lot of LSU, and especially the last 2 years, there wasn't like a single time I can recall where I went away thinking that guy was straight up dominant. And again, high day 2 grade on Will Campbell. I think he's vastly overrated. I think he's a solid second-round prospect, and I would not be upset if the Eagles drafted him. But I just think he's just a name, and I would be questioning that pick, especially if he goes in the top 10 on draft night. I don't agree with you. Have him number 4.
No, he's gonna go 4, I think.
Yeah, and I don't agree with that. Like, I don't think he's that caliber of a prospect.
Mark, can I guess your player comp before you say it?
Give it to me.
Peter Skoronski?
No, I actually
or Talisi Fuaga.
It's Talisi Fuaga.
Okay. I knew I would get it with one of the two.
Why is Skoronski a rash chart comp as well?
No, it just the whole conversation about him reminds me of Skoronski a couple years ago of like tackle, but not the biggest guy with really short arms. And everybody was saying he's a guard. And it got into the whole thing of like, how high do you take him? Because if he can stick outside or not, your opinion of that influence. Like if he can stick at tackle, this is a top 5 pick. If he can't, then you get to, well, how high do you want to draft an elite level guard? And I think that's going to be the whole conversation with him, like it was with Skoronski. Skoronski ended up going 11 overall 2 years ago. I think Campbell's going to go higher. I think it's a weaker draft.
Yeah.
But I think he'll probably kick inside. Like, I'm not saying he can't play outside, but if he has to go inside, I think he can transition inside seamlessly. It's just a positional value question at that point in time.
I did throw, real quick, just because we're on the Fuaga thing, I did put his comp right there. If you want to pull it up, it's one of the more, like strikingly similar across the board, almost like exact size comp. Slightly smaller arms for Campbell. And just before I give the floor back to Dibes on Campbell, I do want to just say, like, points in his favor. A 9.89 relative athletic score here, obviously 3-year starter on the blind side of the SEC. And I think, like, he has everything attitude wise that you kind of want out of a blindside guy. Like, he's been pretty FU attitude about, like, to the media about his arm length and about him playing tackle or him playing guard. And he's like, I challenge someone to find me the play on tape that my arm length allowed me to get beat, and I'll give him $1,000. He said for 2 years nobody had any measurements on me, and nobody said a single thing about my play. Now all of a sudden, arm length decides if I'm a good player or not. Also, I think Shane will appreciate this. Modern medical miracle in Will Campbell. His arms actually grew a half inch from the combine to the pro day.
Yeah, that was the funniest thing.
They grew. There's no tomfoolery there. Everyone knows that arms can grow within, a couple weeks. Yeah.
So he's doing the whole thing with just hanging from the ceiling. Yeah.
It's like a taffy pulling machine, just like pulling his arms, just stretching them as far out as he can go. Just constant Bowflex, trying to get those arms longer.
I mean, I will say, like, he's got a ton of athleticism. He's very polished at tackle. His footwork and his hand placement are always on point.
He's only 21.
Even though he's not big, he generates displacement in the run game really well. He's fluid in his pass sets, elite strike timing. He mirrors speed rushers. He can drop anchor against speed to power. Highly regarded for his leadership. Like, I think everything comes down to just, do you think he can stick at tackle? And the reasoning you would think he couldn't is his height, weight, arm length. It's not the things on film in the SEC. And that's what makes it dicey for me. He would be a bit of an outlier sticking at tackle, but he's played it at a high level for several years. So that's what the whole Will Campbell conversation boils down to.
I will say, the analytics are fun, but I also have to throw in what I saw with my eyes, and I never saw that elite level production. When you talk about guys like Jackson Powers Johnson or Peter Skoronsky, like, those guys just popped. They were so impressive. We'll see, but I do. Positional value is a real thing, and I just think that's why he's outside of my. It's not a negative. It's just the reality.
Yeah, and this is going to come up with, like, all these top couple guys here, but I think I'm more forgiving with offensive tackles that people are skeptical are going to move inside. Like, I'm almost usually like, well, if they've shown me multiple years at the highest level in the SEC or wherever it may be at offensive tackle, where I think that's projectable to the next level, then I'm more than likely going to say, well, sure, he can probably play inside, but I'm still going to draft him as an offensive tackle, thinking he can play there until I see that he can't, I guess, instead of just assuming that he can.
Sure. Yeah. And I'm pretty sure I had, what was his face? Not Jackson Powers Johnson. I'm pretty sure I had Peter Skoronsky, like, in my top 5. Like, I was so high on, even though I knew he was an interior offensive lineman. That's how high I had him in that draft. So I just want to be clear, like, I didn't see him be dominant in 2024. I didn't.
Well, yeah, you have Zabel first, and you think he's probably interior.
Yeah.
What year was Skoronsky? Was 23?
23? Yeah, I think so.
I had him 6. Dives had him 4. Mark had him 9.
Wow.
9.
Yeah. He was awesome.
That makes sense.
All right, well, let's keep rolling here. Get to number 4. Mark checks in at number 4 with Wyatt Milam. I always forget how to say his name, out of West Virginia. He is not in Dibes or I's top 10. He's just outside mine. He was at number 12. So, Mark, talk to me about Wyatt Milam.
Slap that helmet sticker on as a Mark guy right there. Wyatt Milam. I love this guy. He's a dog. My comp for him would be Tyler Smith. who's turned into a really, really good offensive lineman for the Dallas Cowboys, sadly. But Tyler Smith was a guy who, I don't know if you guys remember this all the way back then. I think that would have been our first draft together. Let me look at Tyler Smith's draft year here. I'm not sure, but I think that would have been our first draft together, and it reminds me of him. And I liked him a lot more than consensus. I like Milam a lot more than consensus here. He has an 8.1 relative athletic score as an offensive tackle, but if you switch that over to an offensive guard, he has a 9.2 relative athletic score, above average to good, explosive and agility drills. I think he has the height and, more importantly, the technique to overcome his arm length being a problem at the offensive tackle position. And the reason that I'm bullish on him as an offensive tackle, 1,200 pass rush snaps without allowing a single sack at West Virginia, which is funny because he grades out even better as a run blocker than a pass blocker, a position where he literally, again, has not given up a sack in 1,200 snaps. So it sounds funny because I was the one pushing the analytics there and kind of the RAS chart and all that stuff with Will Campbell a minute ago to Dibes. But I'm kind of saying what he just said, throw that stuff away for me for a second. And just looking on the field, I think this guy has an argument to be, one of the best players, one of the best 20 players just purely on the field in this class. I think he graded out. I think I have him 25th overall. So this is a first round grade guy for me. I love Wyatt Milam. I think he's a guy who can start right away on the offensive line at the next level, 3-year starter there. Again, like PFF grades not perfect by any means, but 92.5 pass blocking grade, 89.2 run blocking grade. Pretty darn elite at both last season, and he's just gotten better and allowed less hurries each year over the last 3 years. His grades have improved each year over the last 3 years. This is my guy. I love Wyatt Milam.
All right, well, let's get to the final guy for tonight. He's number 2 for Dibes. He's number 1 for Mark and I. It is Armand Mimbu out of Missouri. Dibes, take it away.
I'm happy this guy's my guy because I know Ryan had him on his list if he had joined us. But I caught a lot of slack when I called this guy my favorite tackle in this draft months ago. And he was widely considered like a day 2, day 3 guy. And he's kind of risen lately over the last month or so. But he's a lot of fun, man. This is a point of attack winner. He's got great body control, light feet, at his best working in close quarters. Just like some of these other guys, his biggest area of growth is technique and polish and things like that. But, man, this guy was a member of the Bruce Feldman's annual freaks list. He tested out really well, and I think he's just a big-time talent that could probably start out at guard and then be a developmental starter at tackle in the near future. I think he's a first-round talent, and I think he's one of the few prospects in this draft that will look really nice at tackle.
Yeah, he's one of those interesting ones that you got to have a conversation about again because he's 6'4", and that's really small for a tackle. 16th percentile height for a tackle. But he did it in the SEC, and he allowed 0 sacks. He was 6th in pressure rate, 7th in penalties. The biggest thing for him is just where do you see him slotting in? I gave him a first-round grade. He's my number 1 overall offensive lineman. I think he has a higher ceiling and floor as an offensive guard than an offensive tackle. But he has the potential to be a high-quality offensive tackle as well, which is more valuable. And so you start to get into the same thing as you did with Campbell, and that's where is he going to play? Because if it's his tackle, if you could promise me that his length isn't going to be a problem at tackle, this is a guy that should be going extremely high because he has all the other stuff. I mean, he's got really good quickness and body control, and he's a fluid mover, and he's balanced in his pass sets, and he struggles with speed to power a little bit sometimes, but overall, he's a really good player, really fun player, and one that I'm curious to see where he ends up and how they view him.
I had a pretty good comp for him there, and Tristan Wirfs, another guy who is short for offensive tackle there, but he got drafted pretty high, 13th back in 2020, and is stuck at the position and has turned into one of the better offensive tackles in football. Membu's even more athletic, a half inch of arms, but we just talked about that can grow in a couple weeks. If you go to LSU, but. For Membu, 98th percentile in speed and agility, 98th percentile in explosiveness, 92nd percentile in weight, 95th percentile in strength. 3 years starting in the SEC, going against the best edge rushers in the sport. Membu, gave up 3 sacks in 3 years, 0 sacks in his final season. This to me is like a fringe top 5 guy in this class. He's my number 7 guy, I think. I believe I'd have to go take a look. He's either 7 or 8. But my number 7 or number 8 guy overall. And, if the Patriots are going to take a no lineman at 4, and that's just what it is, and, it seems like they're going to take Will Campbell, it should be Membu. Like, if you're going to take an O lineman that high, it should be Membu over Campbell. I am higher on him. Obviously, that's not rocket science. He's my number 1 overall offensive lineman here. But this is not the closer I'm getting to the draft. I'm kind of, I know Dives is a little bit lower on this offensive line class, I'd say, or at least the top of it compared to last year. The closer I'm getting, the more I am thinking Membu and Simmons look every bit like some of these, maybe not Joe Alt, but some of these top offensive tackle prospects of the last couple of years, maybe the Fashanus, the Fuagas, those kind of guys who went fringe top 10. And Campbell falls right in line with that for kind of some of the reasons I laid out as well. But especially Membu and Simmons, the closer we get, the more confident I am kind of putting them solidly in my top 10.
All right. Well, there you have it, guys. Our top 10 offensive linemen for the 2025 NFL draft. We got 2 position groups to go. Wide receivers and defensive backs. We've got 3 weeks till the draft. We're going to be covering it all. We'll get through every position group by the time we get there. So thank you guys for joining in with us. Before we get out of here, I guess we'll toss it around for final thoughts or quick if there's somebody you want to honorable mention. I'm about offensive lined out, but
somebody. I could give a top 10 of honorable mentions.
I know.
No,
but I don't want to do that. I wrote reports on 17 guys in preparation for this show, and I only covered 10 of them. But you covered Milam, and Grant got covered, so I'm gonna refrain. But I'll give you the opportunity.
I'll go first before I give Dobbs the floor for like 10 of them. Donovan Jackson would have been on my list for sure. He's right there. Someone that I will say, Shane was crapping on the center class the other day in our group chat, and I said, "What you know about Jared Wilson?" And that's how I feel right now. Jared Wilson, that's my guy. I like him. I really, really wanted to put him over Josh Connerly and get him into my top 10 to talk about him here, but I couldn't pull the trigger on it. 9.97 relative athletic score there for Jarrett Wilson at center. Only a 1-year starter at Georgia, but 0 sacks and 5 hurries allowed. Graded out well as a run blocker, but I think he's a much better pass blocker than a run blocker. Probably a negative trait as an interior offensive lineman. But I do like Jared Wilson. I think he's an NFL starter. More of a developmental guy. I don't know how you say this name. Ozzy Trapilo? Dibes? Is that how you say it?
I think so.
All right, yeah, he would be on there. He's a developmental guy, and I couldn't mention more, but I'll turn it over to Dives.
All right, I'm going to talk about a guy that actually met with the Philadelphia Eagles, so it's worth mentioning at least on day 3. His name is Jackson Slater, interior offensive lineman, probably a left guard in the NFL. Smart, good pass protector, doesn't have great length and foot speed. But he's got a lot of starts during his time at Sacramento State. Needs to develop his polish and technique and stuff. But he did really well at the combine. He's a strong guy, good frame. So keep an eye out on Jackson Slater for a day 3 fit for the Philadelphia Eagles.
All right. Well, there you have it, everybody. Thanks for joining us for this episode of the Armchair Scouts. We will catch you guys live again next Tuesday night. I think we're going to be breaking down top wide receivers in this class. Probably not somewhere the Eagles are going to go early, but then we're going to go to defensive backs where there's definitely some more needs. So keep it tuned here. We will get through every position group and have you guys fully prepped by the start of the draft. Make sure you're following these guys on Twitter. Dibes is at Mr. Crockpot. Mark is at Mark Henry Jr. I'm at Shane Half NFL, and we will catch you guys next time.